Hello everybody, today is Vayishlach, the 8th parasha of the Torah, Genesis chapter 32 verse 4, which you can see over here. I'm using the Chabad translation and rendition of the Torah because it's available online, anybody can get to it, freely available, and it starts off, Jacob sent angels, 8 of them to his brother Esau, and Vayishlach Yaakov Malachim. In my translation it says he sent messengers. In this translation it says angels. It's interesting that they've chosen to say angels, because angels are a kind of messenger that live between us and God. So Jacob sends messengers to his brother Esau, and he hasn't seen Esau for over 20 years. They've been estranged because of the birthright and all those things we've read about in previous stories. And then the messengers return to Jacob and say, we came to your brother, to Esau, and he is coming toward you with 400 men. And 4 is a very important, 400 is the last, it's the last letter of the letters of the Hebrew alphabet, and it's the Taf. And if we go look at that, let's just stay over here and go to Google Translate, then you can see I've got the Taf here. But if it's actually interesting, because if I write it, it looks like this, and then you can see that it comes up as one of the letters, and the Taf is a crossing. So we're going to read just now that Jacob crosses and becomes Israel, and then he prepares to meet Esau the very next day. And what he does is he spends a huge amount of time preparing the flocks, separating the people, making sure that if he's attacked, that he has backup and supplies, and that the women and children are protected and the flocks are protected. But he also wants to give his brother a gift, and there's hundreds of lambs and animals and sheep and this and that he prepares. And one can see from this preparation that there's a huge amount of negotiation going on. And just as Abraham negotiated with God, so Jacob is preparing to negotiate with Esau, his brother. So what's very important to understand is that if we get ready and if we have our negotiation strategy in place, then it's entirely possible that we can be in the right place at the right time to negotiate any kind of thing that we need with any kind of person, to make sure that we have all our ducks in a row and that we've prepared. And so just in case the worst happens, we're prepared, and we have lots of backup strategies. But what actually happens is that Esau is so happy to see Jacob that they bow down to each other and they cry and they make up. And that's not after Jacob says to Esau, I really want to give you this gift, and Esau says, no, really it's not necessary, and Jacob says, no, please, we've had so much hardship and strife in our past, please take this gift and accept it as a gift from me. And so then Esau takes the gift and returns back the way he came. And one could say, well, he had the 400 men there just in case Jacob attacked him. That's one possibility, but also because of the times they lived in and the people that were in the place. So maybe they needed more protection in those days. So we have the crossing. Jacob crosses to Israel, we're going to see that now. And Jacob crosses with Esau, and they become brothers again. They've always been brothers, but now they're really together. So now, this is all the preparation that's going on here. The gift, as you can see over here, and the second group, what should happen to them, and what should happen to the wives, and then Jacob is left alone overnight. And a man wrestled with him until the morning. And that when this he over here is the angel, the man that wrestled with him, when the angel saw that he could not prevail, he touched the socket of Jacob's hip, and Jacob's hip became dislocated. And this is the time when God or the angel says to Jacob, "Who are you? What's your name?" And he says, "My name is Jacob." And then he says, "Your name shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel, because you have commanding power with an angel of God and with men and have prevailed." So if we go to my translation over here, I created my own translation of the Shema. I've explained it in my book, and you're welcome to fetch it online from Amazon or Smashwords, or if you're in Cape Town you can get the actual book from me. So this is Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. And we're going to read this later, this actual sentence, but Israel in this context means who has struggled, striven to find God and has prevailed, has become stronger because of it, and which is in Genesis 32:29. If we go back there, you can see we are in Genesis 32:29. Your name shall no longer be Jacob, but shall be Israel. And this says commanding power, and this says because you have prevailed. So now what happens is, if we want something, we can't just say to God, "Please give me money," or "Please give me health," or "Please make my wife better," or we actually have to make a commitment to be better people, or to pray in a better way, or to take the advice that we're given and turn it into blessing and wisdom. And so the Jacob becomes Israel. And now this book, the Torah's Enlightenment Toolkit, happened because there was a development of a hypothesis. And it says in the Siddur, the Jewish prayer book, "The Infinite delivered Jacob and redeemed him from the hand of one stronger than himself. Blessed is the Lord, the Redeemer of Israel." And so Jacob is redeemed from something strong. What is stronger than him? It's temptation. Temptation is stronger than us, if we allow it to be. Temptation to sleep late. Temptation to eat chocolate, or more chocolate than we should. I eat chocolate, I eat ice cream. I try to do it seldom. So we have temptation potentially because $1 million or $1 billion rand crosses our desk, and we maybe want to take a bit of it. Corruption, fraud. We have temptation because we're married, but we see the man or the woman on the beach and we want them. And so then we have something called free will, which is misunderstood. Free will overcomes temptation. And in this case, Jacob is redeemed from the hand of one stronger than what is stronger than me? Temptation. And I get redeemed. I get redeemed out of slavery, the slavery of the temptation. We think that temptation is great. I can do anything I want. But the Torah teaches us values. It teaches us to value one another. It teaches us to value certain things. It teaches us to bless each other. And so Jacob is redeemed by the Redeemer. And the Redeemer of Jacob makes him and changes him to Israel. And then there's the sentence from Balak, which is on the cover of my book. "How beautiful are your tents, O Jacob, your dwelling places, O Israel." And I looked at this and I thought, there's something about this. Jacob becomes Israel, he gets a new name. Abram becomes Abraham, he gets a new name. Sarai becomes Sarah, she gets a new name. And this happens all over the place. And it's one thing to have a new name, but what is the significance of the name? What is the significance of Jacob? If we go look at the cover of the book, which I've got ready for you over here, the Torah's Enlightenment Toolkit, this is Matovo Elecha Yaakov, Mishknotecha Israel. How beautiful are your tents, O Jacob, your dwelling places, Israel. So when you live in a tent, it's like having a house. And then you can be Jacob. But then when you make it a home, it becomes Israel. Becomes a home. So the house becomes a home. The tent becomes a dwelling place. The Torah helps us to move from the Jacob archetype to the Israel archetype. The Jacob archetype lives metaphorically in the dark place, Mitzrayim, Egypt. And Israel lives in the light place, Israel. And so, if your name is changed, think about it, your name is changed. What happens when your name is changed? If my name is bad and I make it good, I've got to work at it. I've got to always be good. I've always got to be respectful. I've always got to be respected. It's so easy to be tempted with temptation and pushed into the gutter. It's so easy to lose one's name, one's good name. And so the message here is a message. Jacob becomes Israel. Jacob's name changes. Jacob moves from the temptation that he had before. He becomes enlightened and he gets renamed Israel. And it has been said, the Infinite delivered Jacob and redeemed him from the hand of one stronger than himself. Blessed is the Lord, Redeemer of Israel. The single sentence in the Jewish Siddur, the Siddur is the prayer book, created the foundation for my hypothesis, which became the foundation of my understanding of Torah and Judaism. And then I note that while I'm talking about Jewish and Judaism in the book, I'm using the terms university. So the word, it's applicable to any religion, any way of life. Jacob strives with God. He crosses with God. And he becomes stronger because of it. He says, this is what I want. And God says, wow, I respect you for that. Jacob speaks to Esau and says, Esau, I want to give you a gift of hundreds of animals and all sorts of other gifts that I've prepared for you. And so the gift helps not just with the reconciliation, but with the redemption. Because they've both been slaves. They've both been apart. They've both been separate, Jacob and Esau. And so we can generate respect for each other. We can generate respect for God. God can generate respect for us because we improve our name. We change our name. We change who we are. We change the meaning. We change how people feel about us. So we all have a name. And are we living up to our name? Are we living up to our potential? Are we living up to the expectations of our wives or husbands and children, our relatives, our parents? Are we living up to our clients or our bosses or our companies or the people we work for, or the suppliers or the customers? Are we living up to our name? Have we generated that name? Are we tempted to take what's not ours? Or do we have the free will? If you want to know more about our free will, you can read Assagioli. He was a great psychologist, psychiatrist of the 20th century, lived around the time of Freud and Jung. We haven't really heard of Assagioli, but that's going to come up again. And thank you very much, and I bless you, and I wish you Shabbat Shalom, and a pleasant and happy and whole weekend, and healthy.